Folks, welcome inside the Parisi Palace, high above 3773 East Broadway. This is a live edition of the Jake Feinberg Show, coming to you on Power Talk. Thank you so much for making us part of your day today. And without further ado, I want to bring in very divine spirit, somebody who has been operating on her own frequency for some time. And she has followed, in my mind, the insecure path, the heart, fire, and love that it takes to connect humanity, and in a lot of nonverbal communication, being able to let the body dance and being able to drop into her soul space through the timeless form of dance, music, and vibration. And I've been channeling that a lot on the last few years of my show, as I continue to look towards the light and walk towards that, stumbling into grace. Christina Gomes, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for those kind words.
You're most welcome. Can you talk a little bit about your concept of love and how you bring love to the world?
Well, I don't know if I actually know how, because I'm in process and understanding love as an energy, love as something that we have inside us that's very potent. And tapping into my love vibration has been a journey, right? And a lot of it is day by day. Every day showing up in love and with love. And it's just through the years, it has grown and deepened like any practice would, right? So I don't know if I'm answering your question. Love is a journey for me, but everything that I do is with love, honestly. And my mantra is when I'm in a situation or a challenge or I have to make a decision, my go-to is, what does love do? And then I do that.
Why has it been something that you, what has prevented you from receiving love and showing unconditional love?
I don't think anything has prevented me from it. I've always been open to being loving and receiving love. But sometimes when you're receiving love, not everyone knows love without conditions. We have these preconceived ideas of what love is. And so I've faced challenges in just entanglement with love, whether it's romantically or just in friendship or in interaction with people, because it's our misunderstanding. We each have we're in a specific process with knowing love, and when two people meet and interact always through love to get to a deeper love. I come from a very loving home. My parents have been together since they were 15. And, since I was a child, my mother would always say, be loving, be kind, loving and kindness, loving. Like, these were things that I was taught very young. Like, what is that? And then my life journey became a quest in love. Does that answer your question, Dave?
Christina, there are no right or wrong answers on the Jake Feinberg Show. So just go where your mind takes you.
Okay, great.
Yeah. So just for the audience listening around the world, what are the preconceived notions and misunderstandings that we have about love?
Well, I think the one that that took me quite a while to figure out was that love is not a fixed position. Okay, so when we're in relationship with someone and we say, I love you, and then all of a sudden the relationship part of it comes apart, we think that has something to do with the love, and it doesn't, because when you love someone, you love them throughout. So when I say love has no fixed position, I mean, if a relationship is ending, you have an opportunity to reroute the love you have for that person. Where before you were communicating and expressing love to that person through a romantic channel. But love doesn't turn off because the relationship has changed. Otherwise, it wouldn't exactly be love.
But you feel that that's the misconception is that once the intimacy goes away, then codependency can become involved, or dependency in some sort.
I think in the short of it is when we end a relationship, to say I no longer love that person may not exactly be true. You may have never loved that person in the way in which I'm talking, the type of love that I'm talking about, which is the love of energy that is divine. It's within us. We have it when we come here. It exists without question. So when you're with someone and you say, I used to love that person, did you? Because love doesn't stop. Love just finds a different way.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I've been telling my girls that lately about their mother, is that I love her, but I'm not in love with her, you know. I mean, after 13 years, it was like the marriage it wasn't really functional, but there was, you know, I mean, it doesn't mean that I don't still love her. And so I try to explain that to my girls. You know, I just wonder about, you know, in your habitual nature, when it relates to receiving love and being vulnerable, what you are still trying to work on, and what you're trying to push yourself, where you're trying to push yourself out of your comfort zone in order to grow.
Well, I think authenticity in every moment and being present in every moment. Presence is a really difficult thing to master, you know, that's an ongoing process, but being fully authentic and loving myself so that I am authentic with another human being. I think when we make compromises in who we are for the other person, then entanglement is definitely, you know, a few blocks away. So things that I'm working on and attracting love into my life always is, I want to be authentic at every moment in a loving relationship with someone. And that takes self-love. For me, it's self-love first, and really understanding and being my greatest love story before I can create a love story with someone else.
That's just beautiful. I mean, I grew up in a similar house to you, where there was just unconditional love, but I mean, I just had my own hang-ups with insecurity and things like self-doubt and whatnot, and I just wonder how long it. I mean, I mean, for the last 9 years, I've been on a journey, and I've found my purpose in life, and at 42, I feel very humbled to do that. But you know, I in order to exude and give the love that I give on my show, you know, I do love myself, and I just wonder, even though you came from a very loving upbringing, how you've cultivated to learn to love you.
I had to first forgive myself for not loving myself. That was to recognize, wow, I'm not that kind to myself. I'm kinder to others than I am to myself. And I don't know where it started, where I picked up this internal, I wouldn't say hatred, but it was an unkind and toxic relationship that I had with myself emotionally. And again, it could just be things in society that showed me I was less worthy, or, incidents that happen in school, or teachers not being kind or whatever. Or it could be something that I don't know where I picked up these belief systems, but I did have an internal, this voice inside that was really hard. It was my voice to myself, and it was very critical and very harsh. And it wasn't "you're stupid" or you low down. It was not name calling in that respect, but it was really pushing myself to place it to a standard that would never be met. Right? This is So I was very hard on myself. And it took time to really listen to how I was talking to myself. And then when I realized, wow, you have a toxic relationship with yourself, not all across the board, but there's this pocket, there was this place in me that would go to this channel. Let's just say it's a channel. I had a channel that was toxic, and I would turn that channel on quite often when I wasn't in awareness. And once I was able to identify that channel is not loving or kind, and it's interfering with my natural flow of love, then I was able to work from there. And then I started to hear what I was saying to myself specifically. And then I would decide, is that true or not? What you just said to yourself, Christina, is that true or not? And I'd go through the list, and most of it was not true. And then I started to reprogram myself with kind words, very kind words. And then I spent a lot of time when I'm brushing my teeth in the mirror, talking to myself. When I'm putting on makeup, anytime I'm in front of the mirror or I'm driving, or there's these moments where I just say, I love you, as if I was saying it to someone else, with that same intensity. And that kind of got the ball rolling. And it's just these little pushes because once the ball starts rolling, you're good. It just keeps coming, and you find a way. The way keeps showing up. What to do next, what to do next, what to do next, how to go deeper in love with yourself. So
what you described as I guess more to the point, that was like a very, technical is the wrong word, but it was, that what you described was just sort of a very cognitive process. And I just wonder if you had reached a point at a certain point when the valve to the toxic channel, was overwhelming, and you really had to surrender and learn to sit in the mess when you reached the bottom of the pit and recognize that was the best place to be, because that's where realism is activated.
Well, I agree with you. Realism is activated in moments of trauma, right? So for me, in moments of trauma, and it's not one event, because life brings in all kinds of traumas. So, I've had so many challenges through life. Certainly, I come from a loving household, but I'm not immune to trauma and challenge. But most of my classes in school, I'm the only person of color, right? And this is, in the 70s. So just imagine what socially that navigating through that was, and having other people tell me that I'm low. I didn't know that was even possible, to be a low person. There's high people and there's low people. And I had to learn very early from high people that I'm low. But I had no idea, because in my family, in my unit, in my tribe, there's no such thing as that. That kind of thinking isn't available.
Yeah, so, that's just cultural bias. But at a young age, that's horrible.
Well,
and it's real.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it shapes you. So I had to reprogram the social program that I got over and over again, by the way. And then, there's just, and then heartbreak and job loss and, how do I feed my child? I mean, there's all kinds of life dramas that swing in. But I have learned through each of them, and I get better as they come, that the way out is love, always. So all of the people that were mean to me, forgiven. I understand it. I understand their programming. I understand where they got their programming. I don't condone it, but I understand it. So I can hold compassion to their point of view of me. Doesn't mean it's true. It just means that's their point of view. But as a child, I believed it because I was told by them. But once I reprogrammed, it was easy to hold compassion and to send love their way. So, because that's a mental illness to look at humanity and suggest that we're different.
Right. I think it's like, we have a game on this program, Christina, called Name That Voice, and I don't expect you to know who this is, but pay attention to the content, and then we'll come back and break it down.
Will do. Sounds good.
Because I wanted to be a part of that. I have my own label now because I identify with that kind of effort and awareness. But long before Our Mothers Cried was a kind of a summation or an acknowledgement of, I guess, reality from yesterday to today and tomorrow. That recording was when I worked with Mongo Santa Maria. I didn't use his quote on that particular recording, particular album, but I recorded the album again on Blue Note, and I recorded the tune rather again on Blue Note. And in the liner notes, I quoted Mongo in one of his quotes that he had said to me while I was working with him. Me and Steve Berrios, one intermission night. On one night on intermission, and that was, he said, at least we were able to keep the drum. Mm-hmm. He was talking about slavery and what the abuse that had been done to the African American slaves as opposed to the Caribbean slaves. And he was making the comparison with, at least we were able to keep the drum because the African American slaves were not even allowed to keep anything. And so that title came from that awareness of long before Our Mothers Cried, when life had another kind of reality as opposed to that experience. So that was what I was trying to imply.
Christina, that was, I'm not sure how deep your musical tastes go, but that was the late, great saxophonist Sonny Fortune, who was phenomenal. Are you hip to him?
I'm a little hip to him because he is on some other pieces that I know better. But continue to tell me about Sonny, because that was very beautiful.
Well, this is why I wanted. This is why I wanted to connect with you, because even though I have no idea, I never met you before, but I could feel and see inside of you an aura of, and that reflects Diaspora. And Sonny wrote did an album called Long Before Our Mothers Cried, and it was done on a record label called Strata East, which at the time was a musician-owned label and primarily was fostering this very, very visceral, socially conscious, spiritual black jazz music with a lot of tension and release and pulse and voice and percussion, and it was the hottest thing in the world. The problem is that they just didn't have a distribution arm. It was just, they were overwhelmed. So like Gil Scott-Heron did the bottle on that label, but they couldn't keep up with the amount of pressings that they needed. So it was this like small little label, and Sonny did this song called Long Before Our Mothers Cried, and that was my interview with him from July of 2016. And he just talked about, it was revelatory to me that, just the idea that, certain slaves that, obviously you're hip to Mongo, Santa Maria, but, certain slaves in Cuba or Puerto Rico, I mean, they were allowed to keep the drum because the drum was language. I mean, it was totally the language from the motherland. And then, in the Americas, the tactics were incredibly brutal. I mean, if the slaves were caught with a drum, they'd have their hands cut off in public. And it's been vexing to me. I started my show 9 years ago because I thought we lived in a post-racial society, a very naive cat being born in 78, and it wasn't the case. And I saw all of this coming where we are today, not exactly in detail, but I recognized that we did have a fever and we were out of control even at that time. And instead of leaning into pundits or media analysts or lawyers who really don't care or really don't want to solve the problem because it's actually more incentivizing not to solve the problem, I reached out to musical healers, and I wanted to ask you about the idea that we learn about John Brown as an abolitionist because he was white, but we don't learn about all the black abolitionists. We don't learn about the real history of this country in American classrooms. And I just wonder, like, in your mind, not what needs to be done, but how did you seek out A People's History of America for Christina Gomes?
Well, let's talk about the drum. We'll start there. So the drum is a language, but it's also a vibration. It's a keeping a vibration tuned. And that's also what love does. Love is a vibration. When I say the energy of love, it's a vibration. So these are very important vibrations to have in your body because there's a never forgetting. It's always a hum that's going so that you are who you have always been and who your ancestors before you are or were, right? So that vibration is very important. And the wonderful thing about these rhythms, these vibrations, is they can be reactivated. So many didn't receive the drum, but now they have access to it. So it's really important for us to have organic rhythms in our body to reactivate these indigenous or these old or original rhythms that we have in our bodies. Very important because then we start to really awaken and enliven. But to answer your question about my history, so we don't, in our communities, and this is for all communities of color, all Black communities, no matter what your experience is and where you're coming from, the stories have never stopped. So we're taught that there was a great interruption in the line of our families. And those stories they never stopped. They definitely burned the books and kept them out. But that doesn't mean that we ourselves don't know our own story. And it was a duty to make sure that those stories were carried on. So as a child, I would visit my great-grandparents every Sunday. And there would be, 50, 60 children, from all the cousins and the aunts and uncles. It's a big tribe. And we sit and it's just story time. We say a prayer and then they go into the stories of what happened. So, and their grandparents did that with them. So these stories are never lost. So I didn't have to learn it. It was known. It's passed on. And it's my duty to tell my son the stories. And one of the things that I did do when he was 14 was take him to Cape Verde, which is where my people are from. And then we also went to Sao Tome and Principe, which is an island off of Angola. And there are still slave plantations intact there. So you can see the history. You don't have to guess. And the descendants of the slaves are still living on these plantations, jobless, and they've become ghettos. And they're in the, and it's just incredible to see the system of this great interruption and this enslavement of people. And there are plenty of places, especially in the colonies that are now independent, where they have seized evidence, actual evidence, documents, photos, and they've built museums. So you can go into these museums and see specifically what what the torture was about specifically, and what their techniques were to damage the slaves so that they would be slaves. It's not, and in Sao Tome and Principe, there was just, you could see that, oh, this is a technique, this is a system. It was a system to torture. And fast forward, here we are now, still in bondage socially, for sure, and systematically, there's evidence all over. So I think how to catch up to what's really going on from an outsider's point of view, it's just to bring awareness and ask for the information. Just ask the universe, I want to know now. I want to know. I'm ready to know. And then the answers will start coming, because you'll see the opportunities to get the information where before, perhaps not you personally, but before people could look away easily. They didn't want the information. But once you do have this information, you will be activated to change.
Well, I mean, the hope is that there's a revolution of consciousness, but I mean, even with video cameras and even with body cameras, I mean, Philandro Castillo, nothing happened to him. Nothing happened to the officer that killed him. And I guess here's the rub. This is what I want to ask you, is going back to your great-grandparents, because it was we were so much more connected even before you and I were even birthed. I mean, there were housing authorities in Hartford. Where did you grow up, by the way?
I grew up in Plymouth, Massachusetts.
Holy cow. That's wild. Like Hartford and places in, there were all these, housing authorities, and you'd have to have a black family, a Jewish family, a Latino family, and an Anglo family all connected in these 4 houses, and then there'd be a basement and this is in the 50s, late 40s, early 50s, and all the kids would go down there and play. And even going into the 50s, you'd have Italian neighborhoods with blacks and Jews, and we were just it wasn't easy, and it was the ghetto, and I'm sure there was some horrible stuff that went down, but we knew each other as people. And then here's what I want to get. You don't have to answer this from your own personal point of view, because you've cultivated your spirit, and you're here now, and you have many purposes, and you have a direct connection to the divine when you drop to your soul. But I've been trying to talk to my older daughter about this, and you guys were, Africans were taken from their homeland and sold into slavery. Do you believe that if Europeans had never come and there wasn't this ability to exploit human beings for sugarcane and all this brutal work, your people did not want to come here to begin with? I mean, is that fair to say? Do you believe that? And do you think that, and how would things look different if slavery never happened?
Well, okay. So slavery in my line of people came before America. And the Cape Verdeans, for the most part, but I don't know specifically because history is so convoluted, but my great-grandparents chose to come here. But what was happening on the island was slavery. Cape Verde was a slave processing center. This is where they left the mainland, went on this island, and it was owned by Portugal, and all of the world was there. And this is when they did the paperwork and the processing and the ship manifestos, and they were just moving people. But there was also slavery on that island, and it was awful. And then sometime after, there was famine, there was rain stopped coming, and people were starving. So there were opportunities to get on boats, and my great-grandfather decided it was time for him to get on the boat that was going to America, and that's how that started. But there were many people that were already coming to America because of the whaling industry. So we already knew the way, and we already knew that there were family members here because of the whalers and the people that were working in the ships. And then they became domestic labor or agricultural labor and worked on cranberry bogs, and that's how we grew the families from each generation and bought land and so on and so forth. So my story is a little different than others that were captured and brought straight here. And I can't speak for them. That's not my experience.
You know what I'm getting at is this, and just my middle class white boy ignorance, just trying to learn and ask and seek, what it comes down to is this is some faux white Anglo country that continues to want to stand in this holy realm, even though there's sinning and atrocities happening all over the place. And while maybe some types of immigrants come here on their own free will and assimilate, African culture, the motherland, is where we are all from. We are all from the motherland. A lot of people think that history starts with the Greeks and the Romans, and that's just not true. The first universities were from the motherland of Africa, the medicine, instruments, so many inventions, and that is, that's where we are from. So the question really is, because not necessarily your lineage, but many people were just taken from this culture where the word music and art doesn't even exist. It's just part of life. I remember interviewing Ellis Marsalis, the father of Wynton Marsalis, before he passed away, and Harold Batiste went over there he was teaching at University of New Orleans, and amazing jazzer, and the African cats were like, hey man, what do you do for a job over in America? And he's like, I teach music. And they're like, why do you need to teach it? So there's this whole culture, and there's this whole essence, and there's this whole vibe. And I don't say you guys, so many people were taken against their will, and then absolutely stripped of all their essence and vibe and spiritualism. And white America expects them to assimilate to Anglo culture? Why? I mean, it's I just want to get your take on that. There's no real question in it. It's just, you find this we have to somehow tie their hands behind their back socially, so they can't really have upward mobility because their appearance is different. They strike fear into people because their appearance is different. Their vibe is different. Their spirituality is different. Their everything is different. And a lot of cats in this country, all humans, I think it's great. But for some reason, it's a threat because of a lack of assimilation, when in fact, a lot of those Africans never wanted to be here to begin with.
Well, assimilation the word assimilation is toxic and harsh, in my opinion.
Yes.
Because why, and it's not just for Africans that have been kidnapped and tortured and brought here and are still tortured. It's not just them. It's all peoples that are not white people. And because if you talk to anyone from Mexico, El Salvador, I mean, Jamaica coming in, anybody from other places coming in, people from China, Thailand, Vietnam. I mean, they have all been asked the same thing, right? And have been treated with torture in their own ways, right? So it's not, all of it is horrible, by the way, right?
I just want to say, I mean, again, just being ignorant, it seems to me like none of, there has never been diaspora in Asian culture to America or in those places. In my mind, like, they might have been, we had Japanese internment camps, but I mean, diaspora is unique to the motherland. There's nothing been like, I mean, we didn't force even in the most simplistic way, the mother of my children is Taiwanese, and she came here to pursue a master's degree on her own free will. She wasn't put in a boat in chains and dragged over here and worked to death.
Right. Okay. I agree. There is a special circumstance.
You can just go off and just riff on. Yeah, there's no answers. You just riff. I just want to hear Christina Gomez's enlightened. I'm trying to get enlightened here.
Yeah. So clearly there's a circumstance. We all have a different experience with the trauma, and this is a very special circumstance. Okay. I'm not making light of that at all. But what I want to key in on is the word assimilate. Why are we being asked to assimilate? What happens when we are in our authentic way culturally? Culture, who we are vibrationally, all of these expressions that we have that's original, why do we have to change that? Why do we have to turn that off? What is so wrong with that? Why can't I walk around in my traditional clothing, in my own tongue, and still pay my bills and live in society lovingly? Why? What happened? What would happen if I did that? Why can't I do that? Why can't any of us do that? That's the question, is what happens if we were that way? And I think that there's a great remembering how powerful we are, and that has to be quelled. I don't exactly know why, but then there's also this other thing is, you all have, not you specifically, but white people have assimilated and don't realize it. They have cultures, right? Irish, Italian, I mean, Eastern European, like they when you start traveling the world, you see they also had great interruptions. Not same, right? Not same, but they're not expressing like they used to culturally either.
That's true.
So when we come, if we are taught to remember, then you are going to remember. So I think that this word assimilation is very dangerous. Why would we want to be something that we're not? And how do you become something that you're not? Being American, or being what, I'm supposed to wear jeans, put the brands on, the corporate clothing on, and do what? And that's going to change society, but it doesn't erase who we are. There's no such thing as assimilating. You can't assimilate because you're not that. You never were that, you don't want to be that, and you're never going to be that. You don't choose it. It's to no benefit. So who is coming up with these rules? Let's identify the person that's telling us to assimilate.
Well, no, I want to clarify what that word means to me, because I'm with you.
Okay, please, yeah.
Okay, I mean, again, language is language is a very funny thing, which is why it's so great to let the body dance and play drums and play conga drums and play marimba and play, I do that to get Desgarga. I don't know do you know that word, Desgarga?
No, I don't know this word. What is this word?
Desgarga, Descarga, is a word for spiritual discharge when you're playing drums. Okay, so it's like a liberation.
Okay, got it.
Okay, but the assimilation is this. It's very simple. This is just one tradition, and you probably have your own religion, African religion from the Cape Verdean island, but like Mongo, Santa Maria, going back to the Sunny Fortune line, clip that I played you, he was Yoruba from the Orisha tradition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, those were that's the spiritual drums, and that was their religion. So the mere fact that then it was, oh, you have a different skin color, you are subhuman, if you want to save your soul, you must become a Christian, then they put the stamp of Christianity and the dogma of Christianity within a group of people who did not worship, did not have that spirituality. And because of that, that's the Christian dogma is one of conformity, rigidity, quietness, okay, and it's not the religions of, it's not the spiritual religions of where Africans came from. So assimilation it's kind of just wrong in general. The idea of that word is you need to assimilate to a Anglo religious bent that you were never asked if you wanted to receive to begin with. That's kind of what, when I say that, that's what I mean.
Yeah, the suggestion is you all, hey, you ancient ones, hey, you ones that still wear your robes and know who you are and vibrate authentically, hey, you guys, you become us. If you want to be here at this party, you have to become us. And you don't have a choice. We're going to enslave you and torture you and beat out your vibration, culture, and majesty until you vow to us, which is never going to happen.
And it's more like you know, I'm calling you to go to the party, and you're like, I don't want to go, and I'm like, no, I'm forcing you to go to a place you don't want to go, and I'm going to strip you of all your essence, your vibe, your lineage, and you will submit to that. That is what George Floyd.
Correct.
That's what George Floyd is. That's what all these heinous atrocities are. Is that it's we will take people from their place. Not again. I don't want to paint with a broad brush, but just the diaspora component of it. We're gonna take you to a party, even though you have no interest in going, and we're gonna shackle you, and we're gonna pillage you, and then you're gonna show up at the party, and you're gonna we're gonna strip you of all your identity, and we're gonna strip you of everything, and you're gonna have to conform to dogma in order to not be considered subhuman. But even so, you're still going to be always seen as a lower being, as I guess that was the phrase you used in school.
So here's the thing. We know what happened. There's hundreds of years of evidence of the torture and the terror. It's terror, right? Terrorism is really, you know, there's too much evidence to it's all over the place, right? But the question is why? Why are they? First of all, who are they, and why are they? Who are the terrorizers, and why are they terrorizing us? What is their reason? Because it's very systematic, it's very organized. So who are they, and what is their advantage? Why are they doing this? Why would another human being or a body of human beings decide to be like this? Whether they're using Christianity or fancy words or whatever, but what is their reason? Have we ever sat and said, why? Why is it this way? I'm asking you. Do you have a reason why these people are doing this?
I mean, being that I grew up I'm just an outlier because my mom was Catholic, my dad was Jewish. It was about the most tolerant place in the world. We did not, so many spiritual healers that I've talked to. I mean, I continue to reach out to my elders in the musician world, and I've done 2,000 interviews with all these heavy as cats, and they heal me. But when I speak to all these spiritual healers, a lot of them came out of the church, and it was traumatic. And to me, it just comes down to a fact that. Well, this is what it comes to. I mean, this is the deal. I mean, and I'm just going to lay it out there, and I want to get your opinion on it. I don't believe in the word racism. I believe we are all one human race, but I do believe that there are cultural biases all over this country and all over the world that will inculcate and teach young people to hate, to learn. By the time they're 4 or 5 years old, they are using words that are bigoted, slanderous, demeaning, subhuman. And I mean, there's no baby that's born to hate. And I look at it, and after doing so many interviews, I just recognize that we are one human race. And I think probably the issue is that there's a lot of people who have bought into this idea of race. We have different races, and therefore it needs, and then in this country, because we are just so hung up on this sort of, orderly, whatever you want to say, it's just sort of this paradigm where just through racial division, when you divide people by race, you're inherently segregating them. And that's how, even Gen Xers like myself, we continue to, you just grow up in school learning or thinking that, we are of all different racial backgrounds, and we have different ethnic backgrounds, we have different spiritual backgrounds, we have different customs and culture. But I really think that, it sounds maybe a little bit Pollyannish, but I just feel like if we started to just look at it as we are all one race, it would drive people insane, but it would actually start a dialogue towards more healing. And I don't know if, until the baby boomer generation dies off and exits stage left, I'm not sure if that is going to come to the forefront. But that's really the best I can do, and I'm not even sure if that's even an answer.
The question was, why are white people complicit, and who are the original perpetrators, and what was their goal?
Okay.
Who started this specifically, and why are people still complicit to these guys that started this?
It started with greed. It started with
who was the clan that did it? Who jumped it off? Like who are the masterminds behind this plan? Because this isn't the original way. This was an interruption, a great interruption in the way that if we want to get back to that we are one, okay, that we are one concept was interrupted violently and traumatically. And who is responsible? To me, from an outsider, and again, I'm an outsider looking at society from a black lens. Clearly, there's no high and low. You must know that intuitively. Love can bring you there to come to that realization. But why are you complicit? And why haven't you solved who you're being complicit to? Who are you loyal to specifically? I've been hoping somebody could answer that.
Well, first of all, can you listen? This is really profound, and I'm hanging on every word you say. Can you just speak a little bit louder into the phone?
Sure. Can you not hear me at all?
No. That was really good, but I don't want you to be distant. I need you right in my ears.
Okay, because I have a headphones on, and I'm not sure if
Maybe turn the volume. It's fine. I just want to I just want to make sure we're capturing all this. I mean, I got another. Let me think about that for a while, but I don't have an answer right now. But I actually just think that, kind of going back to what we. I mean, there's this thing again. Do you believe in racism?
I mean, I know that people hate me or have hatred behavior towards me because I'm a black person. So, yeah, I'm treated, yeah, unkind. I have throughout my life, and every black person is going to be able to tell you this because there's no way to escape it. Now, mine may be a lesser degree than some others, of course, but I'm reminded that I am black. And they don't like me because of that constantly. That's a normal thing.
Yeah, see, I would look at that and say that's a beautiful thing, and that's very demoralizing. And I think, thank God, there's a percentage of the country that is sort of trying to come to that reckoning. But I mean, in the sense that, well, I got another name that voice for you, and you might get this one. I don't know. And then we'll come back and break it down.
Right, but history doesn't like the history that's taught in the school system doesn't touch on that.
This is why I do my show.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Like there was there's a book, man. Let me tell you about this book. A woman by the name of Lillian Smith wrote a book called Killers of the Dream.
Let me write this down. All right.
And you should definitely check that out. It's a look at, it was written by a white woman in the South in the 30s, and it was banned. I got my first copy of it from my great aunt, who was the help for a white family for a couple of generations, and they gave her the book. And to this day, you won't find it on the shelf in a bookstore anywhere, but you can order it. Amazon and a couple other people have it. And it's a look at sexism and racism in the South and the kind of creation of the myth of white supremacy. And it's really interesting, informative look, and so.
Could you talk about one profound thing specifically about this myth of white supremacy?
One thing was that for the people who were immigrants from Europe, uneducated, who had nothing and didn't know anything and were given land to farm, and they were Christians. When they were told that, okay, we can give you some folks from Africa to work for you, in order for them to be able to accept the idea of enslaving another person, they had to feel that person wasn't really a person like them. That he wasn't quite an animal, but wasn't quite a human either.
Right, it was subhuman in some way. Subhuman.
Yeah. So it was all right to not treat them as a Christian because they had no souls. Right, that was one of the things they said. That the African savages and the Indian savages didn't have souls, because if they had souls, their skin would be white.
Christina, you want to take a guess at who that is?
No, tell me who that is.
That is. Are you hip to the Neville brothers?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my second interview with the late great the most amazing cosmic cat, Charlie Neville, who was just an amazing saxophone player and such a Zen master, and went to Angola for 2 joints for 5 years. He was busted for 2 joints, they got out after 2.5 years and wound up finding Tai Chi to get off of junk and heroin. But this is it. That was the answer to your question, even though I didn't even realize it was going to come up. It was a creationist myth of white supremacy. You realize this? It was It was a creation, and let me be clear. They didn't give black skinned people, the option to become Christian. They just said, you're not Christian because you have a different skin color. Therefore, you're subhuman, and it gives us a right to treat you like a slave. So let's be very clear. That's the answer to the question. And to say that has not been passed along from generation to generation of people is naive. So it's a creation of the myth of white supremacy. But I didn't just find you yesterday and ask you to come on my show. I mean, that was my interview with Charlie from 2017, and I've been really focusing on this like a laser beam for a long time because it's the only thing I know how to do in order to heal myself and try to begin to expand consciousness or create a revolution of consciousness amongst my generation and younger. So the floor is yours, Christina.
Okay, so Brother Neville said that, they had to convince the people, the settlers, the white settlers, that black people are subhuman, savage, etc., so that they would feel okay with the injustice that they were about to participate in. But that's called brainwashing. That's brainwashing. That's beyond persuasion. You're changing someone's intuitive beliefs so they're brainwashed. And anyone that is complicit in these behaviors of thinking someone's high or low, or thinking that you can enslave someone, because there's still slavery going on, it's just in different forms, you're complicit and loyal to a brainwashed ideology. So these first group of people that were brainwashed, and I don't think they were the first, that's just an example, but so anyone that is participating in these beliefs are doing because they were told to, not because it's intuitive or true. So where are you in your maturity with love and humanity to have these ideals still going on, to have the specific channels still humming in your brain with these beliefs that affect your behavior? All of it is built on brainwashed. So you have to be brainwashed still if you're still operating on that channel. You're just born into it and you haven't really had to question it. And now it's so in your face. But this is what's happening today is not a new problem. There's nothing new about this. It's just expressing itself differently, but the actual problem is not new.
Yeah,
So
I would say that, go ahead.
I think that there's a great opportunity for white people to start examining themselves. What in them is complicit? Where did it start? How did all this start? And you trace it, because we haven't forgotten our stories. We must never forget our stories. Otherwise, we'll be brainwashed too. So we know who we are, and we know who we are. That's without the technology of racism and slavery and Christianity and all of these tools. Not to say that Christianity, I don't want to point fingers at Christianity, but when it was used as a tool for enslavement of the mind. Have you examined all of that? And I think
I just don't know if it. I mean, going back to your own trials of learning to love yourself and, creating a space for yourself to, sort of let those feelings sit and then let them fly away. And I just don't, going back to like modern day, I mean, I think that cultural bias is endemic and a big problem because you just don't have people that have any friends outside of other people that they look like. They worship with the same colored skin people. They live in this bubble where they know nobody who looks different or has a different essence or a different vibe, and they are completely in fear of these people because of a lack of knowledge, understanding, and also just human connection. And, I can't tell you, Barack Obama got elected twice, and I can't even imagine how many people from their church groups or synagogues or from their social strata couldn't even admit to their friend group that they voted for him, because all they hear is ignorant ranting from people who only hang out with people who look like themselves. And so it's still endemic. And I look at, you talk about this examination, white people, and I don't have a lot of faith in it, because obviously the person who's running the country for at least the next 6 months is refusing to have introspection, and his supporters will not do that. And it's also, it's going to require a compromise and a capitulation by white America. I mean, I believe that, the first steps that can be taken, police tactics, yes, I believe that's important, but I also feel like that's a huge amount of money wasted, because until you start bringing in people who actually are good people and not just hiring thugs on the police department, a lot of that's not going to change. But I do believe in reparations. And I mean, the idea that, when the end of slavery, they were promised 40 acres and a mule, that never really happened. And I really believe that whether you like it or not, in this berserko-capitalist society we live in, money talks. And I think it would go a long way towards, I know not everybody would use the money in productive ways, but I believe that very spiritual, transcendent people would put money back into the communities that have been ravaged by cultural bias. And I think that that's a good place to start. But again, going back to plantation owners who were white, they made millions of dollars, if not billions, on the backs of slaves. It was all about greed. And so the idea that there's going to be a capitulation by white America as it relates to reparation, I mean, that's the only thing that's going to happen here. I mean, talk is cheap. Talk is really cheap. Introspection, it goes a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's kind of like basically saying the greed factor is so high that in some ways I believe the first step is reparations. How do you feel about that?
It's a big rabbit hole that I
want you to dive down.
No, I can't. I'm not definitive one way or the other. My focus is not on at this moment, not on this moment, right? Not to pay your way out of it, but my ask is to understand your part in it. And then we can talk about how to recover. But before we have any type of recovery, what is your part in a healthy, unhealthy mental state? Are you in a loving state? Because when you divide and judge and consider yourself supreme, that's not love. You're not in a loving vibration. That's not humanity. That's something else. And examine it. What is it? And I don't know. I think from my experience, and I have wonderful white people all around me and have for, I'm from Plymouth, my goodness. But
yeah, you can't get more white than that.
No, but I'm saying white people haven't done the work. I don't.
Absolutely, no. That's what I mean, and I think go ahead.
So it's hard for me to sit here and say, well, reparations is a good idea. I'll tell you what's a good idea is for white people to do their work, dig deep. What in you, white people, allow you to stand by and benefit in society when all of this is hinged on the terrorizing and killing of Black people and people of color? Like, this is serious, right? So your life and your position in life and the life that you're living is hinged on the death of others. What in you allows that to be okay? Where are you in your love vibration, in your humanity, in your oneness, for this to be okay? Do that work, and then let's have a conversation about how to resolve the races at that point. And it's troubling to see people that just don't get it.
And that's what I'm saying. I think it's a huge amount of spiritual energy being wasted. I mean, I don't want to dismiss it, but the idea that what I guess I'm trying to get at is that, I just interviewed an amazing griot musician. She's like 30 years old, super sharp, amazing dancer and sound healer, and just kind of like a younger Christina. And she's in Portland, and she grew up in the ghetto. And her grandmother taught her to keep an open heart and to love. But I think that what I'm looking at is, and I don't want to sound, overly capitalist or anything, but I feel like one reason these protests have been so effective is because there's a huge swath of humanity here who have no hope anymore. They have lost hope. And they've lost hope in the justice system. They've lost hope in the ability to have any upward mobility in this system. They don't feel any justice. And so there is no hope. And so in some way, the only reason I recommend reparations is that it would go towards trying to rebuild communities that have been ravaged by the infiltration of crack cocaine, which was a government experiment that unfortunately worked in a very diabolical fashion. It would give a lot of men opportunities, hopefully, to get out of the ghetto, aside from being a gangster rapper or an athlete. And it would give hope to those people, as opposed to trying to educate or unbrainwash people who just basically are not going to become. Listen, there are people that are so caught in dogma that it's really. Even what happened with Drew Brees, I don't know if you followed that at all or if you're a football fan, but he made that statement about kneeling for the national anthem. And it was weird. It was like he said it and he said what he meant. He said exactly what he was brainwashed to think, is that I am supporting all those people my family who fought for this country and the freedoms of this country. And then all of a sudden it was like he got this backlash, and he was like, "Oh, I was so wrong. I see the light now." And it's like that to me is not. It struck me as a little bit disingenuous. In general, you can have this sort of snap reaction and say, "Oh yeah, now I understand," but he just happens to be a high-profile white quarterback who made an ignorant statement, and and because of the pressure that was put on him, because of his stature, he had to, retract and be remorseful and he heard from some of his teammates. But that to me is a huge amount of spiritual energy that's being wasted. And I don't like the carnage on the streets, but I am more for at least keeping a promise to people that was not kept. And that is reparations in any way, shape, or form in order to give people hope.
Hope for what? Hope for what? You pay them and then give them hope for what?
That they can raise their family in a community where stray bullets will not kill their children, opportunities for them to have decent paying jobs where they can support their families, where fathers can stay in the household and not feel the need to go out and, where being a father is a hip thing, where it's not, where it's cool to be a nuclear family, or to teach your children and to raise them just like your family did, where they would be, storytelling from the great grandparents. That a lot of that stuff has been shredded, and I don't want to sound Pollyannish, but I mean, I'd rather spend money to do that than to retrain militarized police forces, even though that's the crisis that's gripping the country and that's being caught on video. I mean, anyway, there's no answer. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think that talking about it as the two things that I've thought about is just being able to talk about us as one human race, and people have different skin colors because they just happen to be closer to the sun because of the equator, closer to the equator. So we are all one human race, and those that came over here against their will and were stripped of all of their lineage deserve to be. Short of that, and then just sort of like releasing nonviolent criminals from the private prison industrial complex. I mean, I can't go. I don't know much more than that, But that's how I'm just basically this is how I'm trying to. I'm trying to talk to authentic people who actually try to wear their suits and their dresses and their and where they're from and break this sort of fever, this dogmatic fever of supremacy based on skin color.
Right.
I have one more voice to play for you, Christina, and then we'll come back.
Okay, cool.
As people, what we are as humans, what we are as beings, gets covered with a lot of trash. But what we are, in essence, is always there, because it has to be there, because that's what we are. So, when something comes along, like something beautiful or something energetic or something that's inspiring, it rekindles that natural essence that's in all of us. And that's why you see different things happen at different times, because people are made of love. People are made of hope. And if there's an opportunity for something that shows up that illustrates that, then it plugs that energy into people again. So even though things look dark, or even though things look manipulated and whatever you want to call it right now, there's a lot of terminology. What we are is infinite. What we are is always there.
If I could have encapsulated my show and what it's about, that line epitomizes it. That was a saxophone player named Ernie Watts, who was a decorated studio musician and just a ferocious multi-reed player and beautiful human being, part Native American, a lot of different blood in him. And, like part of my job and my purpose in life is to take people down paths that they wouldn't normally go down themselves and push them out of their comfort zone. And someone like yourself is not daunted by that. Some people are completely unnerved by it because they feel incredibly vulnerable. And then over time they realized that it was an incredibly healing process because they were surprised by what they said, or it helped them move into a different paradigm. And I just wanted to know from you, in general, how you try to affect positive change in our world. And a subset to that is, when did you recognize, when was an early time in your life that you recognized that Christina Gomes had a direct connection to the divine?
I don't know if I realized it. It was just something that was known. I didn't have to realize it because there wasn't a time before where I didn't know it.
Did you ever have maybe not, it was not in the mind, but did you transcend your physical body? Can you point to a time when phenomena occurred and you could not explain it?
Phenomena occurs often that I cannot explain in my life.
Can you give an example?
Often. Sure, I can give an example. New York City, walking to work, take a specific route, voice drops in, take left now, take the left now. I take the left, it's not my route. And as soon as I take a left, I see a woman getting hit by a taxi cab. She's on her bicycle. And she says, "I'm okay." And the taxi cab driver drives off. And she was not okay. And I go to her and I say, "You're not okay. Here's a fresh bottle of water. I want you to drink this and sit with me for just 2 minutes before you stand up." And I walked her home. This is every day. This is every day. This is divine kindness. And just being aware and listening to the intuitive calls that come for your opportunity of kindness. And this is what I want white people to realize. There is opportunity to be kind every day. And when you start to apply that in your life, every day, love starts to grow. And when love starts to grow and you start to examine what it is that you've been doing and be gentle on yourself in this examination, then you have an opportunity to change. Because if we're going to be one, however that looks, and I'm not saying that we all have to live side by side, right? There's beauty in tribes. But if we're going to realize and accept that we are divine and we are one, you've got to do your part. And you've got to heal and do the work and do some inner work and catch up, because we're all waiting for you. We're all moving toward the light, and you're still in darkness, built on the death of others. And we want to rise in humanity. And if we do it together, we all have to do the work. So please, find the work and do it.
Well, this is my way of doing it. So I
appreciate you.
Yeah, no, I'm so humbled to know you and connect with you. And I would actually would love to do maybe part 2 next week if that is if you're agreeable to that.
Sure. We can definitely talk. Yeah,
Good.
I appreciate. Thank you. Well, tell me how did this interview happen for you? Because I'm still kind of unclear how I ended up in your cipher.
Well, I mean, I've been on a completely, I've been leading with my heart for so long that nothing is logical. And I left this planet a long time ago spiritually, and I've been operating on an unquantifiable sort of frequency. And the more that you are able to operate on that, the more you're able to raise the universal vibration. And I think the best way I can justify our connection is that we have been operating on the same frequency together for a long time, doing it in different modalities, and we found each other in the intergalactic, and I've been finding all these people who are in the light. Okay, like you said, there are people that are still in darkness and shrouded in it and protecting themselves in it, but your aura is so strong that and because we've been doing things similarly, doing work, cultivation on the same frequency, that it was just inevitable before, we started to create together,
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, I mean, also I texted you, I don't know if you were hip to that book that Charlie Neville was talking about, Killers of a Dream, but that is the definitive book on the myth of white supremacy.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out.
And
thank you for that.
Yeah, we'll set up a time to do set 2, and we'll continue the dialogue. I feel like we can only do our part, and I've also recognized that the work that I've been doing will most likely resonate long after I've left this planet. I mean, I hope it inspires in the real time. I know it already is, but I've given on to the fact that the work that I'm trying to do will live on long after I'm gone. And so bless you, Christina, and we'll talk soon.
Too.
All right?
Bless you too.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Cheers, my friend.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. We'll be back with Sean Batters and Emily Wilder a little bit later. This is the Jake Feinberg Show. Peace.